Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Mark.
So we just got back from a nice fishing trip, huh?
We did. Our first one this year, Paul.
Yeah, about time.
Yeah. The action was fast and furious.
Action Jackson.
Yeah.
God, we caught so many fish, I didn't even know what to do.
Yeah, no danger running out of bait or anything like that. So
No. So we went to the Long Lake Ice Fishing Derby.
Yeah.
Pretty popular event.
It is. Yeah.
It's
Not so much as it has been in the past, Paul. It was. I mean, it's always busy, but I've seen it a lot busier.
I expected it a lot busier. I mean, it was still busy.
It was. A lot of people.
I expected it to be a lot busier.
Yeah.
I think it's the first time I've ever gone to it.
Yeah. I may have been up there a couple times. I only participated or actually fished one other time 2 years ago with your mom. So
that was the 19th.
Yeah.
Annual fishing derby.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of prizes.
Yeah, lots of value in the prizes and cash.
Yeah,
and
they had a
stuff.
snow
Like
sled.
47,000 or something like that. Yeah.
Snow sled, and then cash prizes were.
Yeah.
I think first place.
Some really nice prizes there.
First place for all categories. It was like anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 in that ballpark. Yeah. And it looked like everyone was having a really good time.
Yeah. Yeah, if there was ever a time, Paul, you were going to go to a derby, especially that time of year. It's one of the coldest times of the year. This year would have been the year because the weather was perfect.
30 degrees.
30 in the mid-30s today.
Today it was everything's melting,
No wind. Yeah, everybody, you could hear people laughing and standing around outside and stuff. And
yeah, you'd see like encampments of ice fishing shacks. Yeah. Which I took a picture of a couple. Yeah. They looked like had a American flag in the middle of them. Yeah. They were living it up. But man, there were ice traps everywhere.
There was. They covered the lake. The lake was pretty well covered. So
bad couple days to be a fish in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, you would get hooked just swimming up the lake. You wouldn't have to bite or anything.
Like trying to navigate landmines.
Trying to navigate through all the Yeah, we'd see flags go up, and ours did a couple times. I think the fish were just swimming around and sampling the bait and stuff. They weren't taking it. They were just mouthing it and tasting it and then moving on to the next. So, yeah, we didn't catch any fish. We had 2 flags.
Big goose egg.
Yeah.
And I didn't have high hopes.
I didn't either because I got the same results that I got 2 years ago. It was we didn't even have a flag 2 years ago, and I didn't see anybody catch a fish there. So, but we had a good time. It was good to get out. And
I mean, they did catch fish. We talking to the biologists. They said, what he said, he saw just over 5 pounds.
Yeah, 5.5 or something.
5.5 pounds, and then Joe Osgood had posted a picture there of a guy 6 pounds 4 ounces. Yeah, salmon, nice looking salmon. So,
and that's the thing about Long Lake, Paul. That oftentimes you won't get numbers, you won't catch a lot of fish, but if you do catch a fish, you can get a good fish.
You can catch some good ones.
As far as quality, it's probably one of the best places in the state to catch quality salmon. Yeah. So
we've done well there in the past.
Yeah, I've caught some nice fish at a Long Lake, but again, it's I've had plenty of days too where I've come home skunked and stuff, but you've got to. You got to put forth the effort anyway. Get out there and go and see what happens.
Yeah, the other bugger going up there was the bait shop was out of smells. Yeah. And going into it, we figured, well, it's a derby this weekend. They'll be well prepared for it. Guess they're hard to come by this year. Yeah.
Yeah. They had told us they had stocked 200 dozen, Paul? Or
they said they bought 200 dozen. Yeah. Brought 200 dozen up earlier in the week, and they were sold out by Thursday.
Yeah, they were gone by Thursday. So all
we had were shiners.
We were relegated to shiners, which I don't know about every body of water, but Long Lake, you certainly will do better with smelt. Yeah. And smelt is the ticket up there. So.
And the biologists echoed that.
Yeah, they did. They said the same thing. It makes a difference, he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that, the fish that took those shiners, they weren't taking...
No.
They didn't even kill the shiner.
No.
One of them hauled out
a lot of line.
Took
a lot of line and left it.
And didn't really do much with it. Yeah. So good time nonetheless. So we'll be going back out this weekend.
We're hoping to, Paul. I'm going to, unless something drastic comes up, I'm definitely going this coming weekend, first weekend of February, and we got a good thing going up to a guy's camp on a lake, and
St. Freud.
Yeah, good opportunity.
Yeah, which I've never ice fished.
Yeah, I've never
fished.
Never fished. Period. At St. Freud. Been there a number of times. So, but I've never fished it.
So yeah, I guess we're at episode 27.
Oh yeah.
No, excuse me, episode 26.
Okay.
I'll have to look. 26. Yeah, it's 26. Yeah. And so we talked a little bit last time about. I think it was last episode talking about deer numbers and deer survival. Yeah, we were talking about feeding deer and stuff like that.
Right. It was
And I came across
supplemental feeding.
Yeah, and I came across an article this past week about northern Wisconsin, and their deer herd has taken a hit.
Yeah.
And so in lieu of that, or in response to that, their IFW is implementing they're restricting the harvesting of does.
Okay.
In northern areas of northern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I guess they had a brutal winter a few years back. It just really kind of resonates with what we experienced here.
Yeah, they're in the same type of climate, I think.
It was kind of deja vu.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, northern Michigan. I think they mimic art, but I don't know if those areas get the snowpack we do. They get the cold and the...
They do. I mean, they do the same thing, because we also touched on what we talked about, the winter severity index. And they have, and I'm sure all these departments, I don't know the ins and outs of the calculation of the winter severity index.
Right.
I know, so Wisconsin, they kind of alluded that it was their own, but I'm sure all these departments use the same sort of gauge to figure out how severe, to kind of put a number on or a category on how severe the winter is. So what northern Wisconsin does is they add the number of days that the total snowpack is 18 inches or greater to the number of days that the temperature is below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. From, December 1st through April 30th.
Well, those would, every state that would deal with winter those would be the two main things, snowpack and cold.
So, so from that, they come up with basically some categories of how bad the winter is. So it's either going to be mild, moderate, severe, or very severe, based on that. And Maine does something similar.
I'm sure they do.
They have stations set out.
I'm sure they do.
And I think they monitor, the biologists go out weekly, and they have a temperature sensor out there that monitors ambient temperature continuously through the season. And it's the same dates as the article.
Well, their winters are the same, the same dates as ours.
I had alluded to in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And Maine does the same thing. They come up with a winter severity index based on snowpack and temperature. Yeah, so they can kind of get an idea on what the mortality rate is for the deer. And then our state, Maine, will then take that data, their estimates of deer mortality, and adjust their doe permits for the following fall. So that's kind of how they utilize that data. So one problem that crops up is you get a lot of armchair biologists. You see it everywhere. Everyone's kind of expert on what...
I would be in that group.
Well, no, I mean, you try to... Yeah. I mean, we all have an opinion.
Yeah.
And people have pretty strong opinions on this stuff. And a lot of people, they have good ideas. Some people are good at pointing out a problem but don't provide a solution.
Right.
I can't stand that. Like, I can't stand when someone comes to me with a problem and then just has a problem, and,
Yeah.
It's good to kind of, if you got a problem, kind of come up with...
You got to do something about it.
What are some ways that we can fix this? So, yeah. So a lot of people are pointing fingers at various things out there. One of which is, and this has come up in some other podcasts that we've done, is we talked about Minnesota a while back, and there's a couple YouTube channels that their hunting season this past year was terrible.
Yes, northern Minnesota. I don't know about the entire state, but these YouTube channels I watched, they had terrible deer season up there.
A lot of them are pointing fingers at the wolves.
They were.
This is kind of the same situation where they've got a wolf population that's like doubled over the past 10 years. And you get a lot of people, you know, saying, hey, we've got a lot of wolves now. And, you know, they think that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't think there's any one thing that generally ever is a problem. It's kind of a multitude of things that play a role. So you get something to say?
Yeah. You're absolutely right, because for us, Paul, in northern Maine, we've always dealt with severe winters. They've always
survived.
We always had high snow, depth, a lot of snow, and very cold temperatures. And it was very hard on the deer. But I think that other element that came into it, you know, 40 or 50 years ago, the coyote was literally like the straw that broke the camel's back. So they could, severe winters took deer, killed deer without the coyote. But when you put the coyote on top of it, it was literally the straw in this far north that broke the camel's back. And so now they really never get a chance to recover, because we've talked about it. And the term that the biologists have used years ago, and I haven't seen it around lately, but the predator pit, once the numbers get so low that they have a very hard time climbing out of that pit, that low number that they're in. They just can't seem to get out of that pit.
Yeah.
Because of predation and stuff that continues.
Yeah.
Even when there's not hard winters or whatever. And I think that's what we've seen here in northern Maine, that you often hear, well, the winters are, yes, but we always had tough winters, and deer numbers did fluctuate, and they would go, and loss of habitat. But I really feel that the coyote was the one thing that really kind of broke the camel's back.
That's right. And so I see the common thread with these other states.
Yeah, now they're dealing with it with wolves. That's right.
Yeah, you know, so, and bear. They've got bear predation and stuff like that too. They alluded to that. But yeah, so you've got like a whole host. There's no one thing. Right. Like one thing in itself, the deer are fine.
Right.
They can do fine.
That's
exactly right. But you start
right.
building upon building upon building different layers of these things. And pretty soon you've crossed the point of no return, where it's like they just can't handle that many things going against them.
I agree with that 100%.
So, and I kind of chuckled. So what does their IFW do? Restrict the taking of does.
Right.
And you think, well, how does that?
How is that going to help?
And so there's many things we'll touch on, but let's start with, so we've experienced the same thing here.
In the early 80s,
86.
86 was the doe permit.
First year of the
and so how's that worked out for us? So that has been literally almost 40 years.
Yeah.
We're 2 years shy of 40 years that they've implemented that. And some people, and oftentimes you hear voices from the southern part, and they'll give their perspective. Well, you know, look how good it is down here. But up here,
no,
we haven't seen any results from that.
No, and that's the same thing in Wisconsin. Is they're just doing these northern wildlife management districts that they're having a real issue with.
Yeah.
And so, I sit there, I look at that, and I'm thinking, okay, Maine's done the same thing. And where does northern Maine stand? And we have deer. It's not like we're totally, I can go out and find a deer track on any given day, but it's not like, you know, the 90s. Right here, you know, or the 80s.
Yeah. And really, you really got to go back, Paul. I think the 50s and 60s were the good days in as far as the big woods.
Yeah.
The northern half of the state. I think the 50s and 60s, and I think from each decade continually dropped until, well, we're at where we are now. And
it's not to pick on like the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and these agencies and these biologists.
No, it's not. Right.
That in itself is a whole complex issue, because they're basically doing an impossible job of trying to please everybody, and you cannot.
Well, you can't.
You can't please everybody.
No.
And then they have the additional issues of, like, wolves are federally protected.
Right.
So what the heck are they supposed to do?
Right.
You know, you can't do anything about that. So I think a lot of it is kind of I don't want to say it's a political play, but kind of well, look, we're trying to do something.
Right.
Whether they probably know it's not going to be
it's not going to fix it.
Doesn't get to the root of the problem.
No.
It's not going to solve the problem. No. Because you see that in northern Maine with, we had a doe permit system started in 86. They recently changed it. Was it last year they changed they kind of rephrased it to antlerless deer?
Right.
Because now they changed it to you apply for a doe permit through the lottery, then you pay $12 to claim it, plus a $2 like application fee or whatever, processing fee. So $14 total to claim your doe permit. That gives you a doe permit in that whatever wildlife district that you get chosen for. Then you get a statewide, you can still shoot a buck statewide.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the problem lied with back years ago or a few years ago is, and I'm guilty of it, is the state comes up with a number of does they want harvested, and you can't hit that target because too many people are claiming doe permits and not using them to shoot does. And I did it. I mean, I think the last time I applied for a doe permit and got it, I shot a buck.
Yeah.
And the whole reason I shot the buck, I mean, I knew it was a buck. I was tracking it, but I couldn't see its head.
Right.
But I had no worries whatsoever.
Right.
And I didn't question about pulling the trigger.
Right.
And so I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I would apply for a doe permit, is it gave me kind of that backup. If I'm tracking a buck, I really don't have to identify it.
Exactly.
I can just shoot it. Yeah. And if it ends up being a doe, well,
right.
I guess it's a doe, and
you're
legal.
Legal.
I didn't have to take an extra second to identify it.
Yeah.
So they weren't meeting their numbers. So they were trying to figure out how can we meet, if we want to shoot X number of does. So they kind of changed the system around. So now you can, any excess permits that aren't claimed can be bought like over the counter.
Right.
And I think someone can buy up to 3 additional doe permits over the counter. So yeah, if someone wants to fill their freezer to the brink, and they're there, it's first come, first serve.
Yeah.
You can keep buying doe tags. And so the other thing with that when they changed that whole process is that money that they raise from the purchasing of doe permits goes to fund purchasing wintering habitat for the deer. So, they address the issue that we've got a serious issue with lack of good wintering habitat for the deer. But I guess just come back to the whole thing with Wisconsin is, we've been there, done that.
Yeah.
And we've watched the fact that, the biologists say it's the does that drive the population. But if at the end of the day, if you're not getting deer survival,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We did the same thing. You talked about the wolves being federally protected. So now you get the feds in on the rules and regulation side. And we dealt with that, Paul, right here when they used to snare coyotes in the yards.
And it was a super efficient way and cheap to take care of coyotes.
Yeah. And now they outlawed snaring because of the lynx.
Yeah.
The lynx were I don't know if they were endangered or what the classification, but they had a classification and which ended the snaring for coyotes. And
and it's funny to note that now you don't see any rabbits.
No.
Anything like that.
No.
You see a lot of lynx tracks.
I see a lot of lynx. I've seen a lot of lynx over the last 15 years or so. I've seen a lot of lynx. I see there's quite a few lynx. So
the department's their hands are tied and with those areas.
Yeah.
So doe permits. Is it going to fix Wisconsin's issue? No.
Right.
It's not going to. Because for simplicity's sake, if we look at, I guess, the 3 contributing factors that I think of right away when I'm looking at, what's going to keep a deer herd going in a northern area, like northern Maine or Wisconsin, you got to have wintering habitat. Then you're looking at winter severity and predation.
Right.
Like those three things right there. If you keep those in check, things are pretty good.
Yeah.
And restricting the taking of does doesn't address any of those areas. And it's not really the department's fault because you can't change the weather.
No.
You can't grow a forest overnight. And predation, you can do what you can do. But when you're federally bound by some stuff.
Now, I have heard, we talk about that, Paul, and I think we talked about one guy in northern Maine that has tried to have an impact on the deer population, Jerry McLaughlin, and I should have mentioned, too, down in the western side, there's a group down there, and we listen to Hal Blood's podcast and stuff, and from the sound of what I've heard, they've made a big difference in the coyote population in that area, and it's had a positive impact on the deer population in those western mountains there, the Jackman, and
that hunting with dogs seems to be a
very effective way of taking coyotes.
I would probably say number one would be snaring.
Yeah,
and then probably close second. I don't know. This is just kind of, we'll call it polyology, but like dogs would be number two. Hunting with a rifle is tough.
It is.
You can shoot you can do what you can do.
We do the baiting thing up here, trying to be in the most effective way of setting up bait sites and having people sit in them there.
But I remember, but talking to guys that do that, the coyotes, they're sharp.
They are sharp.
They become acclimated to. I can remember one talking about how, you shoot the first few dogs off of it relatively easy, but then they're kind of lingering around the edge of the opening and almost making mad dashes out to get a mouthful of food and then running back. It's almost like they know that
they are a cagey critter. The coyote is
coyote.
Very seldom, and I don't think I ever have. Of all the coyotes I've seen while maybe out deer hunting, driving around, there's not one that I could have ever gotten out and shot the coyote. They're gone long before that.
There was one around the house, and it was a big one.
Yeah.
And I was seeing him during the day and close to the house. Like I was sitting in the living room, and he walked right around the corner of the house in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And I had to laugh. I was like, whenever I was doing yard work, I kept my rifle right with me. Yeah. But I'm like, he's not going to live very long because I got numerous neighbors around here that hunt coyotes.
Right.
And if he spends any time out during the day at all, and
he's going to get shot.
I didn't see him.
Yeah, he
shortly
probably
thereafter,
gets shot right up here on the hillside.
And I'm sure one of the guys around here shot him.
Yeah, and that's a good thing
because he was spending way too much time. Kind of out in the open and not. Like I said, he was like 10 feet from the house.
Yeah.
Middle of the day.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna have a short life.
Yeah.
But so I think for these departments, their easiest way to address the most controllable factor is doe harvest. But boys, unless you get to the root of the problem,
right,
it's not going to make much of an
well, we're a living example of that here in northern Maine. Like I say, I still say, you pull up their website and go look in the big woods of all the townships there, and there's not many deer shot. There's not many deer shot in Aroostook County, and very, very few inside that gate, that 3.5 million acre, that piece of forest. And that's all forest.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it's all forest. That's what we used to, deer are with where the forest is, but that's not the case anymore.
No, and deer are very adaptable.
They have to be.
Their ability to survive and bounce back from this stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
You see how far they're traveling now to the yards and spending more time in towns.
Very, very comfortable being with you. You got a deer trail right across your yard here in Fort Fairfield. 40 years ago that didn't exist. I know it didn't.
No,
that deer trail like that in town here. But this is the way. This is what it's turned out to be. And so, like you say, they're adaptable. They try to figure out a way to survive and being around humans in the wintertime is that way.
Has helped them.
Yeah.
And coyotes, man, they do not like people.
No.
They will avoid them at all costs. It sounds like in like Minnesota and Wisconsin, some of these wolves have become a little bit comfortable with people. And
they're protected. So
yeah,
it's the way the moose used to be up here, Paul, when they, you know, before, when they weren't hunted for years and years, moose were very comfortable to be around people. And that has certainly changed in the 40 years that we've had a moose permit system, that they are no longer as comfortable.
Boys, they don't hang around the roads.
No, it's changed.
Yeah.
Their habits and their demeanor.
So it's kind of a shame to see these states kind of, it's almost, they end up becoming reactive instead of proactive.
Mm-hmm.
They see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
They're not stupid, and again, it's a complicated interplay of a lot of variables. And I got to assume at some point, a lot of times they're thinking, well, maybe this one will fix itself, or maybe things will kind of, work out. But then you just get to a point to where there's no looking back.
Yeah.
And now you got a long road ahead of you. But I think, deer are adaptable, and, things can return to somewhat of a good, if done correctly.
Yeah. The one thing, like with us, Paul, that one variable, we always had snow, we always had cold, but and there was years, I'm sure, over time that, we cut the forest and the yards but deer adapted to that. But the coyote thing is something that we never had. Yeah. And now there's probably no end to it. I mean, we're always going to have it. Yeah. So how that's going to look in, 50 years, I have no idea in northern Maine. I don't know if it'll ever go back to the way it used to be. And we talked to biologists, things change, and you get to change with it, that...
we were talking about some fishing stuff with them.
Yeah, things change. And times change.
And he had said, he's like, sometimes we have to adapt.
Yeah,
to the changes as well.
So what's that mean for a deer hunter in northern Maine? It may mean that you have to go other places to deer hunt.
Yeah.
I've heard of people from up here going south to deer hunt.
Yeah.
You may have to pay to deer hunt in other states, and if you really like to deer hunt and are set on being successful at it, shooting a deer, harvesting a deer, you might have to go to some places because there's a lot of places where deer hunting's good right now.
I will. The caveat with that, though, for me is I'm pretty close to Maine.
Yeah.
Like in that way of hunting.
Yeah.
And you said they got the Derby. That's just not my thing.
Right.
There's so many people around.
Yeah.
Some people like, the social aspect of it all. And not that I'm antisocial, but I'm antisocial.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm not antisocial. But
you used to be a people person until people ruined it.
That's right. Friggin' people. Jeez. I'm always getting in my business.
Yeah.
No, it's like deer hunting or fishing. I kind of just want to be in nature and away.
Well, that's
from
why
people.
we go out. We go out for the solitude and everything, and to get away from. Because in your job, in my job, when I worked, we dealt with people all day long, for 5 days a week, and it was. We didn't want to do that so much, and I do love people, and I love talking to people, and
you meet great people out doing that stuff. I think of all the times up fishing.
But you want it to be on a limited scale, too. Yeah. You don't want to be talking to people.
You want it on your terms.
Right. Once in a while is good. And,
But having a crowd of people, I'll go to the grocery store, I guess, or something like that if I want to go hang out with a pile of people. But
go to Walmart.
Yeah, well, I'm good with that. But yeah, so Maine's always been kind of like that for me, especially northern Maine. And it really weeds out the people that kind of want an easy hunt,
right?
Versus maybe someone who likes to hunt, just really enjoys hunting, and doesn't care working really hard and then not being successful.
2 years of it.
Yeah.
I've worked hard. At least I think I've worked
no,
hard.
you
I've
have.
put in a lot of hours, and I haven't even snapped a cap in 2 years.
No, well,
So,
and we talked about that.
Yeah.
I think up fishing. I think it was on like the last Big Woods Bucks podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
One of them was talking, and I agree 100%. You know, they talked about it's a timing thing. Yeah. And I think about all the deer that I've shot, and it resonates with me when I have a deer on the ground, and I'm like, boys, like if this wouldn't have happened earlier today, I wouldn't have shot this deer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's earlier in the day that I'm ticked off about something happening that I think, you know, I perceive it as getting in the way of my hunt.
right.
And it actually resulted in wherever I caught up to that deer, wherever I was at that given moment. Like the morning this past year that I shot that buck, I was a little aggravated because I was in the truck until 9:30.
Yeah.
Right? We went in, so that Saturday before, we found a spot with a lot of deer sign.
Yeah.
And then we have snow, and I drove all the way in there, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
So now you're going, well, plan B.
Right.
Well, plan B ended up being
The right plan.
the right plan.
Yeah.
So if I would have gone there first thing that morning, most likely the way things went down wouldn't have happened.
The only thing about that, Paul, is you talk about timing and stuff. It's a lot easier to get that timing down when you get 20 deer per square mile compared to one or two.
Yeah.
I mean, your timing with one or two deer per square mile has to be really good timing and a lot less frequency than if you had 15 to 20 deer per square mile. And that bears out in the numbers, you know.
Your odds are obviously
not many
a lot
people
better.
shoot deer up here. The success rate in the woods is up here in northern Maine is not good.
But timing is huge, and I think you could be the best deer hunter on the earth, and have an unfortunate set of circumstances, maybe in a couple seasons, where it just doesn't
come together.
Like, I mean, a lot of times you're just like one row of trees away. Yeah. Or, you know.
Just caught him in the wrong spot. You caught him.
Yeah.
You did your job.
And it can happen.
You caught him, but you caught him in the wrong spot. And
if you look at the woods that we're in, I don't know, like maybe 80, 90% of the time you're in crap that
you can't see very far.
Boys, unless you have the end of the barrel on the deer.
Yeah.
You're not going to.
Yeah.
You're not going to get them.
Yeah, a lot of regen and a lot of bushes and stuff. And there sure is. You're not in mature open forest very much.
No.
Where we hunt. So.
No, where you can get a pop at something.
Yeah.
Even 30 yards away.
Even 30 yards, yeah.
So, yeah, timing's
for sure.
Timing's a huge thing. And that resonates with me big time.
And the way you overcome that is what we talked about before, time in the woods.
Putting your time in.
Time spent.
Yep.
Every hour you spend out there is puts you that much closer to that magic time.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, when it all finally comes together.
Yeah.
And some days you have those seasons where it just
you
walk out of the truck and
yeah, they do come, but not very often.
It all kind of balances out in the end. Then you go 2 years with trudging.
Cold, wet, a lot of miles, a lot of early mornings.
Yeah.
But all good. You know, I still enjoy it. You know, I still enjoy being out there. If you didn't, you wouldn't go because the success is, the chances of success every day you step in the woods is you're going to come home more than likely without a deer.
Yeah, well, that's if your success is defined as harvesting a deer.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But, so you better find some other enjoyment in it than just harvesting a deer.
But yeah, so I see Wisconsin kind of in the same boat that we were years back.
I wonder what Minnesota, because like I say, there's a lot of talk in Minnesota, and there are sister states out there in the Midwest, and I wonder if they've proposed anything or they have anything in the works to try to address their problems in northern Minnesota. So,
yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that
plays out.
out.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate because you you'd mentioned, some of these guys, what was it, one they had snow for 3 days?
They couldn't even find a deer track.
Couldn't find a deer track.
Yeah.
I mean, we had it bad, but not.
Yeah.
It's never been that bad.
So one of the channels I watch, I don't know if I can say the name of it on.
I don't worry about that
Joe
stuff.
and Zach Survival.
Yeah.
Joe Jensen, he loves to deer hunt, and he puts out a really good deer camp video every year. And it was so that was one of the channels that I watched. That he talked about that a lot. He was pretty adamant about. He believes it's the wolves are playing the biggest part in that.
Yeah.
In the drop of the deer population.
Yeah,
seeing wolf tracks, but no deer tracks.
And I get that. It's easy to pick on one factor.
Yeah.
And it probably is the driving force.
Yeah.
But there's such an interplay of it between everything.
There is. There's a lot of causes, but there can be one additional cause that you didn't have before, like us with coyotes. We didn't deal with that 50 years ago, so that one cause now is the straw that broke the camel's back. So
well, we've talked about this before too. The coyotes have changed deer tracking.
Oh yeah,
when you were younger, you talked about a lot of deer track them, and they just would jump off to the side and watch their back track, see what was coming.
Yeah, and
you get a lot of deer now. Boys, all they want to do is put time and space between. They've
been pressured. They've been, and that's another thing about the pressure that a coyote will put on deer. They don't necessarily have to catch the deer.
No,
but
run them down.
When you're stressed, and that's another thing, that you go into a deer yard and they're pretty relaxed and they're seeking shelter from the cold and finding some food. But now you throw in that they know that they're being chased and they're going to be chased, and the stress that puts on their body, the calorie,
extra energy that it's
expended. That's required to evade a predator and stuff that they didn't deal with, years ago, and that throws in. They don't necessarily have to be caught by the coyote to have an effect on the population.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, those calories spent may end up being the calories that they would have made it through the winter, and the difference between survival and starvation.
Yeah,
and Wisconsin. So, like you were saying, it plays a part in if they like to go to water now. When they really get pressured, they like to go to water, and they have found out that that's one way that the coyotes do not like water. I mean, coyotes, and deer like to go to water when they're really pressed. We've seen it.
That one a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I listen to a lot of podcasts where when people pressure deer, they talk about that, and they have a hard time, oftentimes, finding, even in a small brook, where that deer came out of that brook. They'll go up and down, and
I was pushing that buck. I mean, I knew I was pushing him really hard.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden we just made a
straight
line, and as I'm hearing the waves, and I'm like, he's not turning.
Yeah.
He's going right straight for the lake. Yeah. And in my mind, I kept going, no, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Like he'll deviate. And holy cow,
and you couldn't find where he came out of the lake.
No, it was running out of time, end of the day.
Right, it was the end of the day.
And so I was in a little bit of, I don't want to say panic mode, but a little bit like, I'm on borrowed time. Like, I don't have a lot of time to dilly-dally. I need to figure out where he's at.
Yeah.
And I only, you go up a couple hundred yards one way. You're like, okay, it must be the other way. He couldn't have gone that far.
Right.
And geez, I go down the other way. I'm like,
if it'd been early in the morning, you could have spent a lot more time looking for where he come out.
So then I threw a Hail Mary, being like, well, I'm going to say he was angled in going down to the left, and there's a road down that way. I can hoof her down to that road and cut in that down in there and see what. And I couldn't find him. So, but that, you got to think that's, thanks coyotes for educating that deer on.
Yeah. I thought it was going to happen to us this year, Paul, on was it Thanksgiving Day that we?
Oh yeah, he was going right to the lake.
We were right near that area, headed right towards the lake, and I thought, don't tell me this is going to play out like Paul's deer did last year, and he was headed right to in similar spot.
Even worse, I was thinking not so much the lake, but there's a brook. There's a brook.
Yeah,
that he was kind of headed towards at one point, and that looks like a crap hole of alders.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh my God, if he goes down in there, that's going to be just a nightmare.
Yeah.
He never seemed too bothered by us.
Yeah.
He kept bedding down.
Yeah, he did.
Almost like he wasn't too, even when we would jump him up, he never seemed really, like he really cared about getting out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah, this stuff always strikes me as interesting, and I don't want to be a armchair biologist or, be like, this is the answer and this is the problem. And, but definitely relatable with what other states are dealing with.
Yeah.
So I think next time, I kind of wanted to do it this time, but I think we'll save it for next time because it'll be way too long and I can get down some rabbit holes on that one. But CWD.
Yeah.
We're fortunate here in Maine that
I don't think we've ever seen a case of it, have we, Paul, in Maine?
No, not yet.
And there again, a lot of that is driven by population and stuff, and we have a pretty sparse population up here, so not that it can happen, I guess, but it certainly insulates us a little bit, having a sparse population of deer that insulates us from diseases and stuff.
Ticks.
Ticks.
We see a lot of ticks up here.
Yeah.
So there's pluses to
having no deer.
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some deer.
There's some silver lining.
Yeah. We always want more deer.
Yeah, I take the deer.
We always want more deer.
Yeah.
So ice fishing next weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm hoping you can go part of the weekend anyway, Paul.
Will.
I know you're busy and stuff, but
I will.
Yeah, we're going with another father and son team, Dan and Brent. So, yeah,
that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to?
No, not a thing. Not a thing.
Any other controversial topics we can?
Yeah, sometimes I can get in. I like you were saying, I can get pretty hard on the biologists and stuff, and I know their hands are tied in a lot of, and they have to use the tools that they have, and oftentimes those tools aren't very effective in correcting the problem, and the tool is antlerless deer permits is what now Wisconsin's going to do, doe permits, and it's what we did, and so
sounds good.
That's one of their only tools they have.
Yeah.
That's
a variable you can directly affect. Relatively easy.
Yeah.
And kind of cross your fingers and hope it is enough of an impact, but I don't foresee something like that. Because you got to get the deer to survive, first of all.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we don't have quality deer management up here, and that's why the biologists and stuff have hesitated. You have a lot of the locals, or you have some people that are really pushing that, but
I want to manage for big deer.
The biologists are saying, hey, listen, if the deer aren't going to survive, it doesn't make any difference. No. If our survival rate is so low, it's not hunters that are driving, the lack of big bucks, and it's not, because you can go into a lot of areas, a lot of acres of forest in western Maine and northwestern Maine that there's no big bucks or no bucks being shot there, period. So,
which next year, the way things are going, I'm expecting to see a lot of young bucks.
Yeah. So we always talk about the weather.
I mean, this year.
Yeah. On the podcast, we always talk about the weather, and the trend has continued. We still have very little snow up here, and very little cold weather.
Yeah.
And we do have a couple nights of below zero coming this week, but I mean, that's nothing for this time of year. 10 below is nothing. And
I just had another guy texting me, telling me, he's like, geez, I don't think the deer have even started to yard up. And I said, well, what's going on? And he's like, boys, they're just like all around my apple trees, and talking about, he's like, they look better now than they did in the fall time.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't believe they look so fat and so healthy.
Well, of course, their winter coats are really filled in, so they look all fluffy. But I had another guy that I talked to just a few days ago, and he told me the same thing. He lived near Haystack, and he said that they're coming to his apple trees, and they look fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
So he says, I've never had deer at my apple trees in January.
This time of year.
So he said, I've never seen a winter like this. And I said, no, not many people have. So, yeah.
There's probably, I don't know. Probably I was out back in the woods today. Maybe a foot. Not even that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a stretch here up country towards Fort Kent. A little more than that. But, around here, Paul, foot would be a stretch.
I just walked out back. Like, there's nothing. I'm thinking, boys, a deer, this is cakewalk for him.
Yeah. So.
And even the extended forecast, we were talking about that. Like, we're looking at...
No snow, other than flurries, an inch or two here or there, but basically no snow and no cold weather.
Nope.
So
next year we should see a lot of young bucks.
Yeah. Should be good for yearling bucks next year, for sure.
We'll see.
And the does should drop a lot of fawns and stuff, and so
see, that's it. You get a couple of these,
the population can,
and you start looking pretty good.
Yeah,
but then it takes just one,
and it's coming. It always does.
Like
the one bad winter's coming, hammered. And you're set back to where you were, and that's the problem with up here. And eventually and probably sooner than later.
Yeah.
The bad winter is coming. So, but.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess next week or whenever we can do it again, we're going to be gone next weekend. So maybe the weekend after.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's about it. Nothing else?
Nope. I've got nothing.
Sounds good. So until next time, get outside.
It's good for the soul.
See ya.